The Oilers finally make a change behind the bench as the Hockey Hall of Fame welcomes in its class of 2023. Hey everyone, welcome into another edition of Off the Post. Rob Wong joined alongside by Toronto Sun Sports columnist Steve Simmons and Postmedia hockey columnist Bruce Garrioch. And guys, I think most people expected that the Oilers would make a coaching change after their embarrassing loss to the lowly Sharks, but the move comes a few days after a win over Seattle. Bruce, we'll start with you. Was now the right time to move on from Jay Woodcroft as head coach, or should it have been done earlier?
Well, I think it's better early than never in that case. You know, the Oilers have not gotten off to the start than anybody expected. And I think what we've seen here, Steve, and I'm going to profess this all by saying I am not a fan of Jeff Jackson. I didn't think I didn't have very good dealings with him as an agent. And I'll stop myself there before I get sued. But I think that really, look, this is Jeff Jackson doing whatever he can to keep Connor McDavid in the fold. And I honestly believe that the reality is that they should have fired Ken Holland along with the coach, because this is no longer Ken Holland's team. This was no longer Ken Holland's decision. I'm sure that Ken Holland didn't want to fire the coach, but he had no choice when Jeff Jackson and Connor McDavid made the decision to bring in a new head coach. You know, there were mixed messages there yesterday. On one hand, Ken Holland says we didn't talk to the players, Steve. On the other hand, the POHO, Jeff Jackson, says, well, we did get the input of the players. So, look, we all know what's happening here, and we all know what happened to Jay Woodcroft. I'm not saying you shouldn't have gone, because look, they've been terrible and they need some kind of change, Steve. But this is now Jeff Jackson's team through and through. And really, I hate seeing Ken Holland's career end this way, but he did choose to go to Edmonton.
I mean, Ken Holland's going to get paid for the rest of this season, and then he's go nicely off to retirement. And I think he knows that, and we know that, and what a great career he's had for the most part. But what's going on in Edmonton is really strange, because they brought in Jeff Jackson, who was Connor McDavid's agent, to run the organization. At the same time, they had Paul Coffey in a position where he reported to the owner. So now they bring in Chris Knobloch, who's a very good hockey coach, by the way. They bring in Chris Knobloch, who coached Connor McDavid at Erie and coached Connor Brown at Erie and coached many other current NHL players when he was in junior, with a good record. But he's brought in because it's familiar to McDavid, and he's brought in because it's familiar to Jackson. So now Jackson is in charge as McDavid's former agent. Now he's got McDavid's former coach. Now it's like they're doing everything to appease McDavid, when Connor McDavid may be the least of the Oilers' problems right now. The Oilers have a pile of problems. If Connor McDavid can play goal, great. Put him in goal. But he can't. And I don't know how the firing of Woodcroft, and I'm not a Woodcroft fan, but the firing of Woodcroft is going to make the Oilers play better in goal, which is what they need to do.
Yeah, that's really the biggest issue right now, it would seem, with this team, that it is behind the defense and in goal at this point. But meanwhile, the Hockey Hall of Fame will welcome in its class of 2023. Plenty of goaltenders in this class, Steve. Henrik Lundqvist, Mike Vernon, Tom Barrasso, also Pierre Turgeon and Caroline Ouellette go in as players. Ken Hitchcock, Pierre Lacroix in the builder category. A thought on the class of 2023, Steve?
Well, I like the fact that they're doing some goalie catch-up, because for years the Hockey Hall of Fame has not I don't think has been equal in how they brought goalies into the hall. And so Henrik Lundqvist he's the star of this class. He's the obvious choice, the easy choice. You know, what a brilliant career. Just, you know, if you could be a professional athlete, if one of us could be wouldn't we want to be Henrik Lundqvist? I mean, look at him. He's perfect looking. He had an almost perfect career, except he didn't win a cup with the Rangers. You know, he looks perfect. And so he's the star of this class. You know, I think then you can get into debates about, you know, whether Mike Vernon or Tom Barrasso belong. And I've been a long-time Barrasso advocate, you know, much as he's not the world's nicest person to be around. And the one I don't get in this entire class is Pierre Turgeon, who he's one of those guys. He accumulated numbers, and I always have a problem with guys who accumulate numbers and they have great stats when you look at the end of their career. But there was no point in their careers you said, boy, that's the guy you got to stop tonight. That's the guy who's going to change that team. That's the guy you have to worry about. And my friend Dan Shulman always talks about the eye test when it comes to Hall of Famers. When you see them, you'll know them. I watched most of Pierre Turgeon's career. I didn't see Hall of Famer.
No, neither did I. And look, you don't want to slight someone who's going into the Hall of Fame. I do believe, though, that if they were going to play catch up this year, I would have liked to have seen them catch up with Keith Tkachuk. I just think the guy had a brilliant career. He put his heart on his sleeve every night, and he didn't get inducted. I was thinking about. I know that they have to put. I know they want to. I think they want 7 people every year. I think there should be room in the book to maybe go with less if there aren't those people available. I think you make a very good point on Henrik Lundqvist and certainly a first ballot Hall of Famer. Tom Barrasso, I'm a little torn on because I dealt with him here in Ottawa, and I didn't. I mean, look, you can't let that bias. But Tom Barrasso had one of the best lines I think I've ever heard. They asked him one night after a playoff game, if he got lucky because he hit a couple of posts, and he turned to the CBC reporter Dan Sagan at the time. He said, "Do you want me to stop the ones that go wide too?" Like just like he didn't miss a beat. Look, Pierre Lacroix. I wish he had been alive for this induction. I think he absolutely deserves to be there.
Yeah, can I step in just for a sec? Because I think the builders this year are terrific.
Yeah,
I have no argument with Lacroix. I have no argument with Ken Hitchcock. I think sometimes we put in people that shouldn't get in. These are 2 that should have got in, and so I'm happy for both of them.
Yeah, I would be with you. I think they could have gone. If this was going to be a catch-up year, then I think that maybe they should have caught up with a guy like Keith Tkachuk.
Yeah, and I would go on the McGillney. I would go on the McGillney train for that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll take McGillney over Pierre Turgeon any day of the week, and I think there's some others that I would probably lump in there as well. But he would be the first on my list.
Yeah, hopefully it's a matter of time just until those 2 guys get into the Hockey Hall of Fame. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Steve Simmons and Bruce Garrioch, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week on another Off the Post.